Good morning, everyone. Welcome to service today for St Mary's Alveley and St Andrew's Quat in Shropshire and in the Diocese of Hereford. My name is Neil. I am the rector, the vicar of the two parishes. So it is Sunday the 31st of May, and in a moment I'm going to have Kirsty, a member of the parishes here, make a contribution and also do the reading. So I hope you're well, I hope you're all happy. Please remember that later on today at 6 o'clock we have on our Facebook page, Alveley and Quat Parishes, a live prayer time with me, followed at 6:30 by our usual bedtime Bible story. And Wednesday, 7:30, Facebook Live, we have a live conversation to talk about anything you want to talk about. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. God bless you.
Hello, I'm Kirsty Ritzenthaler. I'm a parishioner at St Mary's in Alveley and also the safeguarding officer. And Neil's asked us to make a contribution to this week's service. I thought I'd talk about the challenges of lockdown, some of which are the same for all of us. We're all facing the same difficulties and isolation and challenges. Some are also very different according to our circumstances. For us, as what is currently a 4-generation household, including my mother at one end and my 6-week-old grandson at the other, there's a challenge for us all to keep safe, particularly since my husband Benoit is a frontline worker at the hospital and dealing on occasions with patients with coronavirus. So that's our challenge. For us too, as for many, there have been the challenges of Jessie's birth in these circumstances, medical appointments to be kept during lockdown, when loved ones could either not attend at all or in very constrained circumstances, not at all as freely as would have happened in the past. And that's been difficult. That's been very difficult for us, as for many, many people across the country. Other people, I'm aware, are facing additional challenges of what's an already very painful situation exacerbated by the coronavirus and by the lockdown. Bereavements or anniversaries of bereavements, when we can't be with the people who are closest to us and those who really understand what we're going through and how we feel. I have a friend who's a police officer who has made me all the more aware of additional difficulties faced by people in situations of domestic violence or domestic abuse. I'm aware that at the moment I'm speaking to a potentially worldwide audience because we don't know how far out this particular broadcast will go. But I would just urge anybody who's listening, if this is you, you're confronting domestic violence, domestic abuse, or somebody you know is, or you suspect they are, please report it to the police, because these people are so vulnerable during lockdown. Domestic violence and domestic abuse are very secret crimes anyway, and all the more at the moment. And if we don't all stand up and report it, it may go without attention, without remedy. It's very important to do so. Please do contact the police. I'd like really just to finish with my thought of what I find really helpful in these difficult, challenging, uncertain circumstances. There's a prayer that I'm aware of by the American Trappist monk who was a writer, a theologian, a social activist, Thomas Merton. And I find his prayer very poignant, and particularly with all the challenges we're currently facing and the uncertainties. This is how it goes. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end. Nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore will I trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. Amen. Today's Gospel reading is from John chapter 20, verses 19 to 23. That Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. Suddenly, Jesus was standing there among them. "Peace be with you," he said. As he spoke, he showed them the wounds in his hands and his side. They were filled with joy when they saw the Lord. Again he said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you." Then he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." This is the Gospel of the Lord.
Thanks for that, guys. That was brilliant. So if the resurrection is such a big deal, such a life-changing event, why are the disciples still stuck in the same place? What difference has the empty tomb made to them? Has it changed them? Has it let them see themselves and the world they live in differently? Has it done anything for them? It doesn't look as if it's made much of a difference. They're in the same house, behind the same locked doors as a week ago. So what's actually changed? And the question really could be asked to us as well. What has Jesus' resurrection done for us? Is our lives any different? Do you see and engage the world in new ways? What difference has the empty tomb made in your life over the last week or few weeks? When I look at my life, it looks a lot like it did last Sunday. In fact, at the moment, I imagine you agree, most days feel very similar to the last ones. And when I look at the world, it looks pretty much the same as before as well. I used to hear today's gospel and be critical of the disciples. They're stuck in the same place. They should have done better than that. After all, death has been defeated and Jesus is risen. So why aren't their lives any different? I was really asking about my own life. Why isn't my life different after understanding what Jesus did for me? Why am I stuck in the same place? Should I be doing better than that? Should I be living the resurrection better, more powerfully, more fully, more authentically than I actually am? After all, Jesus is risen. I've begun, however, to hear today's gospel differently from how I used to. And here's what I think today's gospel is telling us. Jesus' resurrection is actually a big deal. The empty tomb is a life-changing event, and the resurrection does make a difference in our lives, but it also takes time. Resurrection takes time. It's not a one-time event. It's something that we can grow into. It's a process. It's a journey. It's a way of being and a life to actually be lived. By the grace of God, we evolve into resurrected people through our relationships, through our circumstances, and God wastes nothing in all of it. Every day we're stepping into the resurrected life. It's not always easy, and some days are, let's be honest, just really, really hard. I wonder if we sometimes come to the Easter period and the empty tomb expecting to wake up just after that into a whole new life and a whole new world. I'm guessing that you woke up the Easter just gone into the same life and the world you'd gone into on Good Friday. I know I did. It's not because the resurrection failed or because Jesus didn't do the Jesus thing in our lives. It's because
Jesus thing takes time. Maybe we need to let go of the fact of the empty tomb and start reclaiming the story of resurrection. There's difference between facts and story. Facts are one-dimensional, stories are multi-dimensional. Facts inform the mind, stories touch the heart. Facts transmit information, stories have the power to transform lives. Think about it like this. A fact is static. It's a snapshot of a particular moment in life, while as a story, it's dynamic. Like a film, it takes us across time. The empty tomb is a fact. Resurrection is a story. Maybe we need to begin to understand resurrection more of a film of our life instead of a snapshot of Jesus' life. The fact of the empty tomb is not the story of the resurrection. The facts of Jesus' life are not the story of Jesus. The facts of our lives are not the story of our lives. The facts are actually just a starting point for the story. The fact of the empty tomb is the starting point for the resurrection story. Whatever facts you wake up to post-Easter, they're simply the starting point for the story of resurrection. Too often, however, we take the facts as the entire story, and isn't that what we've done with St. Thomas? The facts come to mind when you hear his name. He was a doubter. Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe. Thomas doubted may be the only fact that comes to mind. But it's a shame that we always call him Doubting Thomas. What if the fact, however, is just the starting point of the resurrection? Because for Doubting Thomas, that doubting was just the start. It wasn't the complete package. What if it's not the whole story? What if where we start is less important than where we go, where we end? And do you know the end of Thomas's story? Do you know how he died, where he died? Well, he died in India. He was the apostle to the people of India. He brought the gospel message of Jesus to India, and he died a martyr after he was run through with 5 spears by 5 soldiers. That doesn't sound much like a doubter to me. It sounds like someone who grew and changed, someone for whom the resurrection of Jesus was real, someone for whom the empty tomb made a difference. It just took a little time, as it does for most of us, maybe all of us. We know Doubting Thomas, but let's not forget Confessing Thomas, Brave Thomas, Martyred Thomas. And he's in today's gospel as well. My Lord and my God. With those words, Thomas has recognized and named a new relationship, a new worldview, a new way of being. Somewhere between Doubting Thomas and Confessing Thomas is the story of resurrection in Thomas's life. All that stuff about Doubting Thomas, the fact of his disbelief, is just his starting place. Nothing more and nothing less. It's neither good nor bad. It's his start. And we all have our starting places. I wonder what your starting place is. What are the facts of your life today? The starting place for the story of our resurrection is whatever it is, whatever your life is today, whatever your circumstances are. That's the starting point of your story of resurrection. So if you're dealing with deep loneliness because of the pandemic or for any other reason, you're dealing with sorrow, you're dealing with loss, you're dealing with doubt, you're dealing with fear, that's your starting point. That's the room in which Jesus enters. If you're locked in a house of fear, confusion, or darkness, it is just your starting point and the place in which Jesus stands. If illness, old age, disability, or uncertainty are facts of your life, that's your starting point and the place in which Jesus shows up. If you feel lost, if you feel betrayed, disappointed, or even overwhelmed, that's just your starting point. And the house you're in is where Jesus enters. If joy, gratitude, and celebration are the facts of your life today, it's a starting point of your story of resurrection. All those things I just described, and a thousand others that you could be thinking or could be whizzing around your head right now, are the many ways the doors of our houses get locked spiritually. Whatever it might be for you, it is just the starting point. It is not your finish line. The great tragedy is not that the disciples are in the same house behind the same locked doors. That's just their starting place. The great tragedy will be if the disciples refuse to unlock the doors, refuse to open the doors, and refuse to get out of the house. I wonder what the spiritual doors that you're locked in behind are at the moment. Maybe they're physical ones as well. What are the things that have kept you stuck in the same point in your life? I'll say it again. It is just the starting point. Don't judge it as good or as bad, right or wrong. It's just where you are, and it's the place that Jesus shows up. It happened twice in today's gospel, and both times the disciples are in the same house behind the same locks. And Jesus shows up. He stands in the midst of them. The walls and the locked doors of their house could not keep Jesus out, and the walls and the locked doors of your house will not keep him out. He steps into the midst of our houses, through the locked doors, through the pain, through the suffering, through the doubt, through the anguish, through the loneliness, and he breathes peace and hope into all of us. He breathes peace and courage into you. He breathes peace and strength into you. And that breath of peace is the key that unlocks the doors. So why don't you take a deep breath? Take it all in. Let it fill you. Let it fill you, the whole of your soul, the whole of your mind, and the whole of your body. Let that starting point become the first step of your journey. Let it give you the hope. Let Jesus give you the courage, and let Jesus give you the strength to unlock and open the doors of your life, and then go out of the house. God bless. Continue on the journey. The start is not the end. See you again soon.